What we're going to talk about today is process. I know that in most of my presentations from feedback, people come primarily to see demos of instructional designs and projects. And today, I'm answering the question that usually comes right afterward is, how did that idea ever occur? How did that project get built? How did you ever get a budget to do that much in a project? Because I never get budgets like that. What tools did you use, and so on. So it's more about the process of getting an instructional product built. And of course, I won't be able to say as much about this topic as is said in my new book that's just come out, and we're really excited about it. It has never, no publication that I've done has generated so much email and so much response every day, every morning. My inbox is full of comments. And I want to point out that we just want to help. You know, even though I may say some fairly unflattering things about ADDIE, you know, I hasten to say to everyone, if you have a process that works for you, you know, that produces the quality product that you want in the time frame that you've got with the resources that you've got, I think you're really fortunate, and you ought to stick with that process. So if you're an ADDIE advocate and you're an advocate because it does for you what you want it to do, then by all means, you should be happy and stay with it. You know, it's the end product that makes the difference, and the journey as well. I used to teach to my graduate students the ADDIE process, and fully and thoroughly believed in it and used it for many years, as have companies that I've worked with. But over the years, we've had a growing dissatisfaction with it. And I get lots of very interesting comments like, our organization officially uses ADDIE, but we really do something quite different, you know, or it's our adaptation of ADDIE, and when you look at it, I'm trying to think, the only reason you would call it ADDIE is because somewhere in there there's analysis, and somewhere in there there's design, and so forth. Well, I can't imagine producing a product that doesn't have ADDIE in it. And if that's what you mean by ADDIE, then you need to declare that. Like, I don't suppose we bridge players are a dying breed, but if you happen to play bridge, one of the things you know if you have to declare your conventions before you start to play, so everybody knows what you mean when you bid and so forth. Well, if ADDIE, by ADDIE you just mean you do those things, then that's fine. I think you need to declare that. But many people, when they talk about ADDIE, really are talking about an implementation of ADDIE in which certain steps precede other steps. And that's what I want to talk about, is just kind of rearranging the chairs, not removing chairs so much, but rearranging the chairs so it goes easier, so it goes faster, so it produces a better product. At least it does for us. And our studios have been using this. I've been working on this since I was with Plato back in the control data days many decades ago. And I don't think by any means the process that I'll describe today is the final end-all, but I know for us it has tremendous advantages in getting a better product out faster, more easily, and I'd say more joyfully as well. It's a lot more fun. Okay? Now what's the first question to ask about a process? If you were a blank slate and you didn't have a process, what question would you ask? What question would you want to have the answer to right away? It's maybe not an obvious one, but I think it is once it comes to mind. Anyone want to hazard a guess? Huh. All right. I have bow ties. They're very stylish.
And You can trade them in for a scarf.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. It's appropriate for Halloween, isn't it? All right, so passive audience, and I'm stuck up here, so it's harder for me to get out there. But, we'll work on this. Okay, I think the first question that you should answer is, what do I want it to produce? Why would you pick a process that doesn't produce the product that you want? Oh, a lot of us have done that because it's legacy. But if you were to start from scratch, I think you need to answer this question. What product do you want? What do you want the characteristics of that product to be? There are many other questions, for sure. Some years ago, when I was starting to work on Authorware, what became Authorware, a tool, a really smart fella advised me that before you start sketching that out and building that, you should know what process you want the tool to support. And that was a really good red flag. Stop. Think about this a little bit. What do you want the process to be? Well, as I started thinking about the process, another red flag went up and said, well, what do you want to build? What should the process be optimized for? So I think this is just a really key question, and I want to spend just a little bit of time talking about what product I'm trying to build with the process, because if you're trying to build something else, you may rightly decide that this is not the best process for you. There's a bunch of educational products that you could build, obviously, of many, many different characteristics and parameters. But what I'm always looking for is success. And it may just be too simplistic, but nobody has been able to give me an argument of why this is wrong. And that's that success always depends on one thing and one thing only, and that's getting people to do the right thing at the right time. That's all it is. It's as simple as doing the right thing at the right time. It doesn't matter if you're talking about reducing crime. It doesn't matter if you're talking about producing cars more effectively. It doesn't matter if it's customer service. It doesn't matter if it's losing weight, whatever. It's all about doing the right thing at the right time, okay? So that's really all I'm interested in. You need to notice one thing that's really important, and that is it does not say knowing the right thing. Because in actuality, we don't care what each other knows. We only care what you do with that knowledge. And if you just know it and you can answer a multiple choice question, you aren't very valuable in most situations, It's what can you perform, what can you do? So my scale is you begin with knowledge, which you want to transform into ability, which you want to transform into performance. And it's only when we hit performance that we should give ourselves a gold star and say we're successful because those people are successful, and they are successful because they are doing the right thing at the right time. So I see all of this linkage very clearly in my head, and I hope it's right. A lot depends on that in the other things that I'm concluding. So one instructional approach is what I call, euphemistically of course, tell and test. Some people would also say it's tried and true, I suppose. I would say tell and test is tried and tried and tried and tried, and not really very good ever. But that's what we have, most of us have grown up with in school, probably, and that's that somebody has presented information to us over a period of time, whether it was through lecture, whether it was through a book, whether it was through a video or reading or whatever it might be. And then we had a quiz at the end to find out if we were paying attention, basically. So it's very convenient to deliver this way. And I see an awful lot of stuff going on that I consider to be just extraordinarily boring. And it's boring because this is all it is. It's just shoveling the stuff out, and then at some point, tell us that you paid attention to it, and we're done because we're out of time, right? So I just not excited about this. there are some real problems with it. One of them is that we're really smarter probably than we give ourselves credit for or we give our students credit for. And that is, if you know that there's going to be a quiz at the end, and this doesn't matter if it's corporate training or second grade, if you know that there's going to be a quiz at the end, we allocate our brain power to learn material so that we'll have it at the desired time. And then it erodes amazingly fast. You know? Because we're really efficient with our brains, and if we think the only purpose for this knowledge is that test, then we don't waste building a superstructure in our heads to retain it. We just don't bother with that. And this tell and test form of instruction really fosters forgetting, if you will. So I have to tell you that I'm not interested in a process that's designed to optimize building tell and test stuff. You know, I'm just not interested in it. But if I were, I think I could think of a process, and it probably would look kind of a lot like a simplified form of ADDIE. You could do something a lot simpler than all of the steps that are usually listed in ADDIE and get a tell and test. And in fact, that's what lots of teachers in schools and everywhere else do many, many, many times. Now, as you know, I do most of my work with at least an e-learning component in it, so I tend to think about this in those terms. But everything that we're talking about here in terms of process and in terms of product is not in any way restricted to e-learning. But it sure applies to e-learning because of all of the expense that we have to go through in building our applications. And so yeah, we really ought to get them right, especially because e-learning replicates the experience to as many learners out there as we can deliver it to. So there's a greater obligation for us, I think, when we're using an amplifying distributive technology to get things as good as they can be, to get them right. So I don't think we want tell and test. By the way, the performance slope on the left-hand side is also pretty slow, because if you're telling the same thing to everybody, then you're missing a lot of people. Either they're not ready to hear what you have to say or absorb it, or they already know this, you know. And you can spend all the time and effort and animation and energy you want trying to teach people things that they already know, and you won't be very successful, right? You can just waste your time and energy. So, you know, trying to teach people things that they already know only results in boredom and frustration, and I don't want to be here, which further accelerates the forgetting kind of stuff. So this is just really not good, in my opinion. If you wanted it, you've got that. So, and it doesn't get very high on my ladder to success here. So what's a little bit better? Well, obviously, I think interactive learning has the potential for being a lot better. Now, there's interactive learning and there's interactive learning, right? Not all of it is really great. And we have to talk about what we mean by interactivity, because I mean instructional interactivity, which you know, is defined as an event that stimulates the mind and prepares it to perform successfully. And you can have a lot of page turning, and you have a lot of animations, and you have a lot of cute things on the screen, and call it interactive. And by my scale, it wouldn't be interactive at all. It just has transactions going on, you know. But interactivity is stuff that forces your mind to think about something in a way that it hasn't thought about it before, to make some connections that it hasn't made before, and then be able to act on those, okay? When that happens, we have a chance to rehearse tasks. And by rehearsing those tasks, then our ability starts to come up. But if it's all massed together, you know, you remember, isn't that terrible when your mind goes blank? Classical conditioning. Excuse me? Yes, Pavlov, yes. And operant conditioning is Skinner. There we go. Thank you very much. Whew. Remember the pigeons, Skinner's pigeons. And what he found out was that in training the pigeons, and of course with mice and rats and others, and it turns out to be true of humans too, we followed the same boat, is that if all of the training is massed together, then the extinction of that knowledge of performance is very rapid. But the optimal is to space it over time with either random or increasing spaces between the practice, and then you get very long-term retention. This is just a basic thing that's been known from way before I was born and around, and it's surprising how rarely this is actually applied in training and learning situations. But you really want to spread things apart. And if you do that, performance, distributed practice, performance is not only retained, but through a process of consolidation, your performance starts to rise even on its own without further instruction. People refine their performance to get better. You know, if you play a musical instrument, it is good to practice frequently, but you shouldn't practice the same thing every day. You should put space between it. When you come back to it, there is scientific evidence that there is a likelihood that after taking a break, you'll come back and play a piece that you played before, but play it better than you have ever played it before. And that's because you gave yourself a little break in there and things work. Well, anyway, distributed practice really, really helps. And we're getting up into that level of successful performance where we really want to be. But if we add some motivation and mentoring on top of it, then we have the real potential for success, okay? So much more to talk about that, but we've got to get to process, so I'll move on. Now, as always, I've been trying to take what always appears to be really complicated and simplify things. Try to find the core message, the core understanding. And I think we did some years ago when we came on CCAF. CCAF defines the 4 components of instructional interactivity, and if we analyze anybody's instructional design through CCAF, we have a lot to talk about, and it can be a very constructive discussion. Otherwise, I don't feel like we have a good language with which to discuss instructional design. I'm going to have to go quickly here too, but CCAF stands first of all for context. Context is so extremely important, and we know that. How many times have you heard somebody trying to explain something that isn't coming through very well and have them say, let me put that in context for you? Ah! Context is really helpful to understanding, right? And so much instruction that we do doesn't have any context, you know, it just goes, it's more like well, even Jeopardy has a little bit of a context, at least it's got the column, right? But so much training and instruction is done without context, and it's the context that helps people make sense of things, make things meaningful. So context is really important. And then the challenge, because if we want people to learn to do something, then shouldn't they be doing something while they're learning, right? So not just reading about it, not just hearing about it, not just watching it, but they ought to be doing something. When somebody's doing something with a piece of software or something else, don't you really want to grab the mouse and say, let me try it? Yeah. At least I do. Well, that's because you really would like to learn this, you know? And you just know instinctively that if you try it, you'll find out if you're learning it or not. You can watch somebody else use a piece of software, and it looks so easy, like, oh, wow. And then later, you go to do it, and you get 1 or 2 steps into it, and you're completely lost. You have no idea. And it's because you weren't doing anything while you thought you were learning it, you know? So you need a challenge that relates an activity to a context, you know? It's just kind of the glue that energizes everything and makes it happen. And then, of course, there's the activity itself, and then we want consequences. You know, one of the interesting things is studies of people who are really effective performers and learners, and what strategies do they use versus people who are not. And one of the things you find out is a remarkable difference is that people who are good learners intentionally make mistakes especially if they're not going to be graded on it and scored, because they want to see what all the consequences are. What are all the wrong things? Because I can learn from this. Whereas people who are at the other end, who are maybe a little more less confident, but in any case don't have as good strategies, will try to just get through it as quickly as possible, trying to get all the answers correct. Isn't that funny that the lower end learners really try to get the answers correct, and the upper ones really think, gee, it would be smart of me to make a bunch of mistakes here before, just so I can see the consequences. So what we really want to have is those consequences, the CCAF complete circle, and to me, this is the way to do instructional design. It does not matter what medium you use, whether it's going to be a private mentorship or a tutorial or a lecture or whatever. Recently, people have said, I get this, but I just can't come up with any ideas. I look at the stuff and I don't know where the ideas come from. So I've been working on that issue as well. I have a book on this. I was trying to figure out a way to say this without saying that, and I can't figure out what it is. So anyway, it's called, it's about learner interface design. How do I get the ideas to put people in CCAF situations? Well, one of them is you find out who they are, and you connect with people, about what is it that interests them, what is it they have to do, what are they afraid of, what do they currently know, and so forth. So you need to make that kind of connection, and there's a lot to say about that. And our projector seems to be happy flashing things. I guess this is hypnotism. We're going to send this message. So apologize for that. Yes, Halloween effect, right? But that gear isn't quite enough to drive this whole thing, and so what we need to do is to empower people. And this is where we're going to start talking about the tools and the process. Because if you're going to be learning to do something, then you should be doing something while you're learning it, right? That means that you have to use a tool that allows people to do things. And it can't be a static tool, but it's got to be one that allows lots of gestures, recognizes as many as possible, so that we can at least emulate something that's really done in the physical world. And the technology is moving more and more and more so that we can sense more things, not just with screens, but with real objects and so on. And this is just opening, I think, the candy store for those of us that are in training, because we're going to be able to empower people in so many more dimensions. And then you need to orchestrate the whole thing. And that's where you need to look at a new learner is not going to benefit so much by making a lot of mistakes at first as a learner who has some developed knowledge. And so we don't want to frustrate people by giving them high-level challenges at first, even though in opposition to tell and test, I think you make major strides by switching those two things around. It's just kind of as simple as that, and you start testing first. Now, a test is just a general concept. I don't mean that you're going to put them in there with a 16-page multiple choice question test. But I really like to ask people to face a challenge almost on the title page or the first encounter with my students, just right away. Have them. Now, why is that? Well, when are you most awake? When are you most awake? When are you most aware? Somebody's got to have. When are you most... I didn't mean time of day, but even even with time of day, that's a response. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't quite fly. There's a zebra tie for you, which, as Scott said, is exchangeable for a scarf if you'd rather. When you're challenged, or just a little next to that is even a better answer, I think. But when you're at risk. Yes, thank you. Who is that? Yes, all right. This is just really good. This is a life-size poster. Not of me, thank goodness. This is the process that we're building up to on a poster that you can put up in a conference room or your office and so on, and talk with people about. And I would like to give this to you if you don't mind coming up and getting it, because as you know I can't leave. But yes, when you are at risk, it doesn't matter. Thank you. Would you like this or not? Help you get it home. When we're at risk, you know, like I got to get out of this building, or you know, when you're on the road and somebody is thinking that they should have the lane that you're presently occupying and so forth, you're pretty awake. You know, you're looking around, you're looking at all your options. I really like that notion. You're looking at all your options, because isn't that just like taking a test? What are my choices? What are my options? What are the things I could answer? It really wakes you up right away. That's why I like to walk through the audiences when we're talking, is because I like to go up to somebody, and if I would just, you know, like the man right here in the green striped shirt, if I just went over close to you, you would feel like there's an increasing level of risk here, right? There is now, right? I already did that. And so that really kind of wakes you up. What's going on? What are my options? Why didn't I choose one of those earlier? Like, go to another session, because you're standing right here. He's going to ask me a question, and I could be embarrassed, you know? So I want people to be awake, looking and thinking and evaluating their options, right? And so a challenge right away, but in some kind of context, is fantastic. Well, this is all under the heading of orchestrating these things, knowing when to do what and deciding, you know? But you connect these things together, and I don't know, did you play with the gears or not? But anyway, this is a tool, a development tool that I'm really proud of, because we built it. And it's focused on exactly this kind of stuff. This is Zebra's apps, and it's focused on not just presenting information, which it does very, very adroitly, but it's a tool that really makes it easy for people to interact and move and do things. But there are other tools. I mean, you know, Captivate and Lectora and so forth. There are a bunch of Storyline and so on, all shooting to do, I hope, to do the same thing, because this is what we really want, is we want to be able to do things and see the consequences of them. And if I'm stuck, I want to be able to ask you for help. And then that's when we do the tell part of the tell and test. When somebody says, I need help. Oh, let me help you. Isn't that a lot better than just telling people what you think they need to know? They may need to know that, and they may not need to know that, because we don't know what they know and what they don't know. So much better to let them help for the information, ask for the information that they need and give them the help, than just to throw it out there. Okay, so we will hasten along here a little bit. So we're going to try a little bit more interaction and see if this works. And that is the question, what do we need in our model, design and development model? What are some things that you would like to see? What would be the characteristics of it that would be helpful or beneficial to you? Especially if you can do it in a short phrase, it's really good. Yes? Speed. I want it to be fast. I want to get there, because I don't have much time to get these things out, right? Yep. What else do we want?
Low cost.
Low cost. Yeah. We want to make really good use of our resources. High quality, in terms of the product, right, that we produce, right? So high quality. Sorry, something about evaluation. Feedback evaluation, absolutely.
Fun, engaging.
Fun and engaging. Oh, you guys, I like you guys. This is good, because I think this is just a great list. We could add more to it, and I did think we might take some time to say which one would you like to put at top. Somebody pick, which one would you like to have first? Which one's most important? Fun? Fun, all right. So we could put that up at the top and make it fun and engaging. And what would be second, perhaps?
Feedback and evaluation.
Okay, feedback evaluation. And so on. Yes. You got to get there we go. So forth.
High quality.
And the high quality, but it might be next. No, you got to watch your insertion bar. There you go. And speed and low cost. I'd like that because, you know, one of the things, while cost is important, it bothers me that we talk so much about optimizing our time as opposed to optimizing learner time, you know. And presumably we are few to many, right? So whose time is it most beneficial to optimize, our time or the learner's time? I would think the learner's time, right down. If it takes us a little longer to get it right, that seems like a smart business or organizational choice to me, even though we know organizations are not good at smart choices. But anyway, who said that? Who said that? Okay, so your list is pretty similar to mine, actually. In fact, I only put 4 things on there. Efficiently, effectively produces the desired products, kind of back to that first question. Manageable by managers. And I said by managers because I want people who generally are pretty good at management to be able to manage this kind of product as well. I don't want them to have to learn all the ins and outs about instructional design and learning and technology and so on, because most of them never will. And that means that we're going to get a lot of difficult directives to work with because they don't really understand it. But I would like a process that they can really relate to and understand. And I have often said, I think that might be one of the selling propositions of ADDIE, because, you know, it's got 5 phases and it looks structured that way. And I have, just this morning, 2 of the people who wrote to me comments about the books or the videos or something said, well, our manager thinks we use ADDIE, and we have milestones defined by phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we produce work that she reviews that meets those, but we don't do it in that order at all. Yeah. So I said, so you're just producing those things for your manager? She said, yeah. It's exactly what you're doing. They're producing them for the manager, and then sort of in parallel, they're producing the product. I don't think that's efficient. I don't know about you, but I don't like that. I like it to be iterative in nature because I like the idea of doing something small and simple and then stepping back a little bit and see if I feel like I'm on the right path before I've done too much. Because if I'm not on the right path, I won't have lost too much face or too much money or too much time. You know, I can just kind of pitch that out and do it again. Whereas if I've done all my analysis and all my design, and I'm getting into it, and then I realize I'm on the wrong path, now what do I do? You know, do I try to just kind of keep going and fix it a little bit as I go forward, or what? Because it's going to be hard to throw it out. And then I like something that unites the team, brings us together. Instead of fault finding, like we're going to be way behind because the analysis wasn't done quickly enough, so we're going to have to catch up in development, you know, and that's going to be popular. You know, then you start having a lot of, well, it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. And I have very often worked with organizations that I've been able to ask anonymous questions about the end product. And it's surprising how often I find people, everybody who worked on it, saying they're disappointed with the final product. It wasn't what they thought we were going to do, they were going to do. But so many compromises were made, so many mistakes just couldn't get fixed, couldn't go back and fix them. So the end thing, which everybody was excited about at the beginning, they're not so excited about the end, other than it's done. I don't have to work on this anymore. The next project's going to be different, and then it goes the same way. So I want something that makes us feel good, you know, that we do have fun with. I like that. So let's talk about that. Here's ADDIE stated one way. I think this is the classical statement of ADDIE, if you wish. Clark, it's Don Clark, isn't it? It's either Don or David. Don, it's Don, I'm pretty sure, right, yeah, Don. Has a nice history of the ADDIE process and has a comparison on his website of different processes. I recommend that. If you can see it anyway, the source, the email is down there, but you can easily find it. Just Google ADDIE or Clark ADDIE, and you'll find it. And I think there's some very interesting information. If you're a historian and looking at how these processes have evolved, there's lots of content there. But just looking at the process, I find it really problematic, even though I understand it. And again, this is a process that was written for the military back when there was a great urgency to get a lot of content turned into instructional material as fast as possible. And the people that were doing it did not have instructional backgrounds, or at least not very deep. And so it was mass production of instruction as quickly as possible. And this is probably a really good idea here, to go through these steps and tell everybody to do this under those circumstances. But I don't think it's a really good idea now when, first of all, we have different tools where we know a lot more about learning, where people expect a lot more from learning experiences than they did back then, and where we expect a lot more impact to come out of the instruction. So, if you look just like in the second phase there, where they go right from developing objectives to developing tests. This sort of implies right away that we're going to do tell and test in a way, because we have the separate group over here creating the test. We're doing it in secret because we don't want to bias, we don't want to be testing what you actually teach, so we're doing it over here, and then you develop the instruction. Well, wait a minute, what I want is those challenges interleaved all the way through, so I know that my learners are making progress as we go. And I don't want to lose somebody halfway through, and the rest of the time was really wasted because somebody has stumbled somewhere along the middle and can't get back on the track. And it doesn't help them to find out that they're failing after the instruction's over, right? I want these challenges mixed in, so on. So as you look at this, I think you see lots of interdependencies among tasks, not just interdependencies among tasks within a phase, but across phases. They're all over the map. So I definitely don't want to implement this as a waterfall, that go left from right, do all of my analysis, then all my design and development. I don't think many people do that. If you try to do it, I think you'll find it's really, really hard. So I don't think it's a natural thing to do. But in any case, I don't think it's a good thing to do. It just doesn't work for me, and I know a lot of organizations. I love this quote by Skimmon. I think it's really right. Make a plan, sticking to it guarantees a suboptimal solution. That is, it's nice to have a process that's a guide, but you ought to be aware and thinking and doing what's effective and works right. I'm sure that in the military they didn't have a chance to do anything but what that said at that time, but I hope that's changed now. So again, all these plans are just sort of a backdrop, and then it has to be articulated by the organization, so on. And people have tried to do that. These are a couple other diagrams of showing how people realize now evaluation way at the end is not a good idea. You can't see the slides very well, I bet, can you? I'm sorry. I can step back, but I probably fall asleep. But, so the one on the right, I think, is good because it shows evaluation at least after, if not within each step, and it shows upward arrows so that if there are some questions in design about analysis, then we should go back to analysis. But I actually think of design as a way of doing analysis. So I think it's different. I have to share with you that one of the feedback messages I'm getting a lot of, and it's leaving me just really perplexed, is as I go through this, I get the feedback that I really agree with your process. I think it's right. I just don't see how it's different from ADDIE. I don't know what they're saying, because it's really different from ADDIE. It's just so different from ADDIE, I don't understand, except that, as I said at the beginning, it has analysis, design, development, and implementation, so forth. In there, it's just we use them for different purposes in different ways. I think that's different. But if you agree, send me emails, you know, I'm taking a poll. Yeah. And if you outvote me, I will probably keep saying the same thing. So please click. So what I think one of the things that has excited me and given me added confidence to say the things I'm saying is the rise of the so-called Agile process. There are a variety of different names for it, but Agile didn't come from our field, it's come from software engineering. And there are similar processes defined in mechanical engineering and even in writing and creative work and painting and so forth. And I think it's not too much of a stretch to say that pretty much we're all saying the same thing. And that's really confirming for me and exciting. So I'm going to borrow just a little bit from some things that have been said about Agile. For example, our highest priority is to satisfy the customer through early and continuous delivery, and then they say a valuable software. So one of the worst things to happen is to work on an instructional program, say for a few months, and have the key stakeholder then take a look at it when you pull back the draperies and have that person say, I didn't think it was going to be like that at all. You know, I thought it was going to be video. Why did you think it was going to be video? I don't know, I just thought that's the way it was done, you know? And it's just terrible to have those reckonings late in the process, right? So what Agile does is it tries to develop sort of a deliverable product in very short amounts of time, and then make it better and better and better and better and better. The idea is no surprises, you know, or as few surprises as possible. So I really think this is just very smart, and SAM, the process that we are talking about, really embraces that notion. Welcoming changes whenever they come. Now, I'll tell you, an ADDIE purist is not going to like that. But when do the best ideas come? I always think of good ideas as like children, you know. You only want to, they want to be heard whenever they want to be heard, you know. And they often want to be heard at the most awkward times. And that's what happens with these processes. You've been working on a product for quite a while, and then you get the idea, oh, this is how we should do that. Well, why does that idea come so late? It comes so late because it's born of all the other ideas that you had preceding it, right? And you have to increment up to it. It's very hard to have that huge, big foundational idea at the beginning when you're building the foundation. You know, it wants to come at the end. The other observation about that is that there's always another one. Because this is really a great idea, and if you took the time to implement that, partway through that great idea would be the next great idea, you know? And then, oh, God, we've got to get more time. We've got to get more time, you know? Well, the thing to be calm about and accepting about is that this always happens. There's always a better idea. So these projects are never finished. They're always abandoned because you've run out of time. You know, you have to deliver and so forth. But you can always come back and do it again, right? If you consider these things just iterations, then the next iteration might be after the launch and the rollout, and it might be a year later or 2 years later and so forth. But it's, if you have an iterative process where you do have a chance to build on an idea and then build on that idea and build on that idea, whenever the clock bell rings and you have to be done, you will have the best product you could have built within that time frame. And you deserve to be proud and happy about it. It couldn't be better, in my view, because you could never have those great ideas that you got in there because you used this process to let you have those ideas early enough and implement them. And that all starts from doing small chunks. Well, I'd like to go through more of this, but I can't. The manifesto is another thing you can easily search for online and read through it, also in the book. And I think we have a lot to learn from these people, and I have really enjoyed it. So, SAM 1 and SAM 2. I really need to have T-shirts made, SAM 1 and SAM 2. And then I need twins. But there's two versions of this. One of them separates development from design, and the other one integrates it. I much prefer SAM 1, which is this, and it's embarrassingly simple to diagram. I mean, it can, I suppose, feel like quite a letdown after all this discussion to say, whoa, that's it? Well, it isn't. But this is the big concept right here. The idea is that you don't see an analysis exactly there. You see evaluate. Evaluate is sort of analysis. It says, what do we know? What do we know easily? We're not going to spend a lot of time, as Alison Rossett writes, if you've read her books and so forth, you know, first things fast. And she says, analysis paralysis gets you nowhere. And there's always more questions to be answered. There's always more analysis that you could do. But why not just answer the real questions that you've got? You know, and if there are some things that you don't really have a question about, then just take what you know and go with it. Just run with it. And if you find out it's wrong, then stop and go take another look. Well, that's just exactly what we think here. So kind of find out about what performance is not satisfactory and what performance do you want to change. Again, because I'm thinking always about performance. I suppose you can think about what knowledge is inadequate and what knowledge do you want to change. But let me discourage that, because that's only taking that little piece of enabling stuff, and why not go for helping people you know, achieve more of their potential and contribute more. So what are they not doing? What do they need to do? And then put something on the table. This is the exciting thing. Just what do we think would be great? Because that's what we designers always want to do, don't we? We always have an instinct about what we want to do. It's probably not the best idea, our first. And so what we like to do is throw it out on the table as quickly as possible, as roughly as possible, build up just enough of it so that people can really see what it is. Not write about it, not write a specification document or a description of it and so forth, but actually build a little bit of the thing that we're talking about here. And then let people look at it, and then we analyze it. We find out, we really ask the question, why not this? And there'll be lots of answers to it the first time. So I'm going to let Scott talk just a little bit about a project. This is a project that, you know, don't you wish our projects were funded as a percentage of the value they bring an organization? Because this one was on bank fraud. And in fact, this little project reduced bank fraud in the millions and millions of dollars. You know, and this was not an expensive project at all. And yet, in terms of the bank's success with it and meaningful, it was worth a fortune. You know, I mean, we should have been able to charge a couple $1 million for this. Good luck with that.
All right. So just in the, as we're talking, this is the first round prototype. And so our design phase is prototypes, show it to the team, have them discuss it, iterate, add in the things that we've talked about, and then move forward until we all decide this is a good design, and then continue along. So the first thing we asked was, what do these people need to be able to do when they're done? And all they said was, look at a check, look for 6 components, flip it over, make sure it's endorsed properly, and say yes or no. And so instead of going with the subject matter expert who had all this information they wanted to dump on that user, we always went back to, okay, that's great information. How does it get them to do what we want them to do? And if you can tell me that those two relate, then we can get it into the training. But if you can't, we're going to skip it and move on because it's just noise to that performance. And so this is a first round prototype where we said, well, we have to introduce the check, obviously, and put the 6 things that they need to look at. And then we're going to actually put them into a challenge where they have to look at the check, they can flip it over and decide, is this negotiable, yes or no? And we're going to give them feedback on what's negotiable or not. What this did was allow the team to look at these things and say, oh, great. Now, what do we need to add? Well, in the second round of iterations, we added things like we're going to take and put a date in. And we're going to actually put these and show them in order. So they have to click on these things in order. And that was brought up by a new learner who said, well, the way I did it was I started at the actual date and then went to the amount and kind of did it in clockwise order. So we added that in as another design element. As we went through this, we then added a date that they could check it against that was dynamic, and we just iterated on the design until we finally came up with this design, which had everybody's comments integrated into those prototypes into a final component. So here, we have to introduce these things, so we're going to introduce them. If they click on them out of order, we're like, no, you need to look at these in order because that's what we want you to do on your job. So the first thing you need to do is look at the date. And the learners would just say, okay, well, I'm just going to click on these in order. I'm not going to read anything about it, and I'm going to move on, which is kind of what we do. You know, we find a pattern, we move through, but then we come up with a next challenge and said, okay, what's the first thing you need to look at? And they're like, uh-oh, I got to go back. And I've got to learn that and come back. And now we've taken these things without the crutch and say, well, the first thing is the date, that's right. Then, no, that's not right. We go through here. And we have them actually practice that process by which they're going to go through. Once they've got through this, then we actually take and we do what they're going to do. Again, here's the context, is you have a check. Your challenge is to say yes or no, this is negotiable or not. We're going to flip this check over, look at its endorsement, and we're going to say yes or no. If we said no, which is the correct answer, that could be a 50-50 guess. So what we've said is, hey, great, you said no, but why did you say no? And they have to actually click on the area of the check that made them say no. So we've really brought them into this process of context, challenge, activity, and we're giving them feedback to help them practice those skills that they know. We then move right into the test, which is exactly the same as our practice, except we don't give them feedback. We just have them look at the checks, flip them over, make a determination, yes or no, because this is what they need to do on the job, and they've got to get 100% to move on. So this is kind of the process of that ADDIE follow, or that SAM follows, of prototypes, evaluate, reevaluate, add in things that people have great ideas by seeing those prototypes and then moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay.
One of the things that's most exciting to me about it was that it was a learner who looked at a very early prototype who said, this is the way that I figured out to do it. I look in clockwise order through it. Now, it's just a really simple notion, isn't it? Just look in clockwise. And yet, you know, many banks, and certainly Union Bank, had been teaching people how to recognize a valid check and differentiate it from an invalid check. And yet nobody came up with the idea that you should always do this in the same order because you will be you'll be less likely to miss a step by always doing it in exactly the same way. And so that became part of the content. And we wouldn't have had that in the content had we not been able to do early evaluation that somebody over here was recommending. And we got that input, and we got that early enough so that could become actually part of a core design element of this whole product. It's really quite fun to do, actually, because those checks come up in rapid order, and you have to decide right away if they're correct or not. And I think appropriately, the bank's criterion is that you can't miss any to be done with this exercise. Now what they do, and this is smart, is that they have people repeat this throughout the year. And at all levels of the bank, even. You know, this was originally a supplement to an instructor-led training program, and it actually ended up taking the place of the instructor-led because it was so effective, didn't need it. And then they use it for distributed practice through the year, so people are reminded to do this. And if you are on the ball and you meet those challenges, you're done with this in a very short order because you make correct decisions on all of the checks that come up. and you're done. So it really impacted performance. It really led to success. And, we just are proud as punch about this. And that it was done using SAM1. Okay. So SAM2 is for those cases where development needs to be separated from design. Now, I just don't like having to do that because I've got my company organized by studios, and all of our clients meet everybody in the studio and works directly with them. So if it's going to be e-learning, they get to know the programmers, the project managers, the writers, the designers, the artists, and so forth. And they know them on first-name basis, and they have contact with them. That helps me because everybody in the team is trying to find the best path to success. And I want everybody with their particular skill sets thinking about the same problem and trying to help each other work on it. But sometimes, an organization either outsources development or feels the project is just too big to manage that way, or has a variety of reasons why they want to separate it. And so this kind of the more full-blown, elaborate process has a few phases. And I could talk about them very quickly. The first one is backgrounding. And again, here we just try to collect the information that's handy, that's just easy to get. And then we take and get the stakeholders together in a meeting we call a savvy start. This is the most critical thing to the process, I think, is the savvy start. You have to insist that the stakeholder be a participant. Really have to insist. I don't have time for the story where we were working for the Apple computer, but Apple wanted us to do some sexual harassment training, and they wanted high-level interactivity, and were really challenging us to do our very best. And I said, we can only do our best if the stakeholder, whoever created the budget for this is responsible, is part of the team. And they said, well, that's our general attorney. And I said, oh, geez. Well, he has to be there. And they said, she has a very busy schedule, and I doubt that's possible. And I said, well, I don't know that we can do this project then. And they said, really? I said, really? And sure enough, she said she would participate, and it was just great because she put nuances on what the real challenge for the corporation was, and that really helped us a lot. Going in, people understood that, well, we have to teach people the law, the California laws about this, and this was sounding like a tell and test thing for sure. And when we asked her about, is that what you really want, or are you concerned about liabilities for poor performance inside the company? And she said, I don't care what people know. I only care about their getting me in trouble. Yeah, I said, good answer, good answer. So let's design this, in such a way that we really want to get that kind of performance out of it. And so we did, and it's just been really successful. Well, the Savvy Start is that SAM1 process done over a couple of days where we actually build some prototypes. Again, it doesn't have to be e-learning. It can be instructor notes, and it can be role-playing descriptions. It can be whatever it is. But in a couple days, we try to come up with a good feeling of what is important to all the shareholders or the stakeholders. And for me, and this could be for a lot of you too, the most important thing I get out of this is who's in charge. Who can really throw a wrench into this project late in the game? I want to know who that is, because I want to make sure that person is attending to what's going on through this product development as it goes. But maybe that's just from a business point of view. I'm not sure. I think you'd want to know, though, even if this were being done internally in an organization. So that's phase one. We try to get something up as at least not a template, but a model that we want other things to have similar characteristics to. And then we go to iterative design. Now, here we still do prototyping, and we do a lot of review, but there's going to be additional design. Not all of the people that come to the Savvy Start are going to be there. There's going to be some of the experts that we really need to take the design responsibility, and we're going to do project planning. I've got sample project planning illustrations in the book for you too, if that helps. And then finally, in product development, the iteration, we do the same thing we do in other places, the Agile process. We do a small piece. We try to keep the work to not more than 2 weeks, but sometimes it's as much as a month. And you deliver something that people can actually use and test, always. It's not a specification for something to be built. It is something that's usable. It's probably crippled in a lot of ways, isn't complete. You know, it may have some placeholders in here. It says picture of somebody doing this here and so on, but we really want to get potential learner feedback, stakeholder feedback, supervisors of people who are being trained, get their feedback, and so we develop these pieces in small parts. We call the first one a design proof, because this is going to be setting the criteria now for everything to come forward. If we have to do several design proofs iteratively, then that's fine. It's well worth it. We get it right. Everybody understands the style, what it's going to look and feel like. And then through iterations, we spit out the alpha, beta, and gold product. Well, we tried to squeeze a lot in a short amount of time. It's a lot of fun to do this. If you ask the people in our studio, they really enjoy doing this because it's inventive. It encourages people to be creative. It's not a bad thing to have a good idea, even late in the process, you know. Now, sometimes we say that good idea is going to have to come after the launch of this product and hopefully in another iteration, and it can't fit this time. But it does allow more of those good ideas that come late to get involved than any kind of a waterfall process where you do the analysis and design and development up front. So, there is, my little commercial in the end here is that those nice posters we've got, where there's a limited number of them, but they are free here at the conference. We're sponsoring a lunch tomorrow. There'll be bookmarks available, and it has a little coupon in it. If you get a book and you take it over to our booth, which is 507? 507. 507, the first 100 people get a big poster for free. If you don't want to buy it here, you can buy it. This book was sponsored by ASTD. They commissioned it, which is amazing because it flies in the face of some of their standard stuff. And yeah, but if you buy it through their website within 10 days or something like that of this conference, there's a 15% discount on top of membership discounts if you already have that. So come by the booth and talk to us. I'd love to hear your feedback. I hope we really only want to help. This is a process that works for us. We think it produces a better product more easily, less expensively, and it's more fun. And I would just really like to hear that that's your experience too. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Thank you.